Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, October 16th, 2024, and this is the Daily Brief. In each of the stories that I go through today, I'm going to show you the story behind the story. So here's what happened, but here's what's really happening behind the story. So let's start here with the number of casualties. Russian casualties, 1450. That's high. 1271, I believe, is the average of the highest month, which was last month. And so 1450 is exceedingly high. I think I've seen it as far as 1500. I don't remember exactly if there were 1600. As far as 1500, I've seen once or twice, but yeah, this is remarkably high, and the tempo is up for a reason. 9 tanks off the battlefield, 30 armored fighting vehicles, 29 artillery systems, 78 vehicles and fuel tanks. But part of the story that you're not seeing are things like, if you look at artillery losses, for example, in 9 months in 2024, Ukraine successfully eliminated 10,373 Russian artillery systems. That's the equivalent to the destruction of 144 artillery brigades. That's in 9 months of 2024. So that's kind of helping you unpack like what's actually happening. Here's Andrew Perpetua's list of losses, trucks and tanks and things along these lines. You look at it, it's about 2 to 1, but it's not the ratio that I'm interested in today. It's the volume, it's the sheer number of losses today, and that tells you more about the tempo of what's going on. The other day, I talked about how, well, before I say that, 0 out of 1 ballistic missile, 0 out of 1 KH-59 cruise missile, and then 51 out of 136 Shahed drones shot down, and another 60 out of 136. So that's a total of 111 out of 136 Shahed drones that Ukraine was able to divert. Now, before, this is what I was about to say before. The other night I said, hey, remember I showed you that thing about how there were no Shaheeds attacking Ukraine? And they were saying, no Shaheeds today. And I was saying, this makes me really nervous. Why does it make you nervous? Because when they uh, use only a few Shaheeds, they're generally stacking them. And you see it here, nothing, almost nothing, and then 136. You see it here, very few, and then a lot. You see it here, few, a lot, right? That's their pattern, and you can see it if you've been watching this long enough. Okay. Overnight, Russians launched a devastating attack on the industrial site at a Ternopil region, sparking large-scale fire that quickly engulfed the area. So again, 25 of these Shaheeds got through, as did 2 missiles, and Ternopil's over here in western Ukraine. Here's Lviv for context. Russian forces have upgraded Shahed drones to fly higher and faster. I don't think that matters a whole lot. They're able to knock down a lot of Shahed drones. They're pretty good at it at this point. Despite this, Ukrainian mobile fire groups have also improved their tactics in continuing to shoot them down. Now, what have the Ukrainians have done here? More than 7,000 Ukrainian strikes have landed inside Russia this year. The farthest strike reached more than 1,700 kilometers into Russia from Ukraine's border. Long-range strike drones have targeted military sites such as ammunition depots, as well as national infrastructure like oil refineries. And so they've been giving back this year in a significant way. Now, Ukraine has been using this interesting pattern as well. They have Ukrainian decoy drones, which are launched together with the kamikaze drones to break through the Russian air defense. This little 18-second clip is interesting.
Also launch dozens of decoy drones like these, which they want the Russians to detect and to shoot down. They even put tin foil on the wings to give them a bigger radar signature.
So you want the Russian radars to see this and think that it's a bigger drone.
Of course, very good, yeah.
Also launch.
Yeah, so I mean that's part of the pattern. These are inexpensive, and then the others hopefully are, these divert lots of the fire, and then they can hopefully hit their target more effectively. Okay, now about 2 weeks ago, October 5th, 2024, Russia shot down their own S-70 Hunter uncrewed combat aerial vehicle. And I was commenting about it, how it looked like a stealth bomber as a drone, and as it flew west over the front lines of the Ukrainian conflict. It's likely that Russia lost control of this UAV, and its decision to destroy the aircraft was to avoid it falling into the hands of the Ukrainians, who could then like try to reverse engineer and understand what was going on with it. Sukhoi Enterprise. Now, remember, there were only, I think, 2 of these that were ever made, and yeah, that's the story behind what happened there. Okay, now again, I told you about the tempo is up, where we're even looking at something just crazy with these numbers of 1450. Okay, so the tempo is up, and Russia has seized 5.5 times more Ukrainian territory in the past 2 months than in all of 2023. They're pushing really hard. They're trying to get some ground taken before they can get to winter seizing up and, causing things to slow down significantly. Shortage of weapons for Ukrainian forces may be contributing to accelerated Russian advances, according to analysts as well. That's certainly going to be a major factor in what's happening here. Okay. Mandatory evacuation is announced from Kupiansk and surrounding areas due to worsening military situation and constant shelling, says the local administration. Russian forces have moved closer to the Oskil River. That's just a bad scene. That did not need to happen. Lack of artillery is primarily to blame, in my estimation. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about what's going on with things like North Korea. Jay in Kyiv says it's unreal. Biden likely to merely add more sanctions to Russia as punishment for North Korea joining the war. The weakness is shocking, and it goes on. So here's the actual press interview.
In response, any concern?
We are concerned by the reports of DPRK soldiers fighting on behalf of Russia. If that's true, it would mark a significant increase in the relationship between those 2 countries, the relationship that you have seen develop over the past several months. It would also indicate a new level of desperation by Russia as it continues to suffer significant casualties on the battlefield.
The EU has signaled sanctions that they're going to announce tomorrow. Are you guys willing to follow suit?
I don't have anything to preview today, but obviously we have imposed a number of sanctions and other measures to hold Russia accountable for its behavior, and we'll continue to do that.
But Russia's not been held accountable. I mean, you're adding sanctions, but that's it. What else are you going to do here? Gary Kasparov says, and are the U.S. and NATO going to stand back, concerned, of course, as an alliance of evil makes war on Ukraine, on Europe? It's not just leaving Ukrainians to die. It's teaching dictatorships around the world that there is nothing that they cannot get away with. So we're concerned. We're concerned. We have sanctions. And that's it? Because of European countries' fear of spending 0.05% of GDP on helping Ukraine keep Russians out of Europe, they will soon be forced to spend 30% of GDP keeping a coalition of Russia, North Korea, Iran, China out of Europe. Well, again, this is commentary, but his point should be taken. Like, you can pay now or you can pay a lot more later. And yeah, so you got to do something while you can. U.S. shoots down missiles over Israel, but not over Ukraine because Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons, while Russia does, reports Politico, citing anonymous sources. Here's a quote. This is devastating. Quote, "We can take the risk of intercepting Iranian missiles without provoking a direct war with Iran that could lead to a nuclear conflict. There is much more risk when doing this with Russia," unquote, said a senior U.S. Senate official. What? So you just admitted that Russia is nuclearly deterring you. With their nuclear force, they're deterring the West. That's what's happening. But sure, we can do this with Iran. Now, what happens when Iran has a nuclear weapon? Does that change the calculus of what you would do to support Israel? Like, I understand, you have to ask these kinds of questions. Okay, Ursula von der Leyen, there is no European language in which peace is synonymous with surrender. Here she's speaking, and you're going to listen to this for about a minute.
Still some who blame this war not on the invader, but the invaded. There are still some who blame this war not on Putin's lust for power, but on Ukraine's thirst for freedom. So I want to ask them, would they ever blame the Hungarians for the Soviet invasion in 1956?
That is a freaking great question. that's brilliant rhetoric right there.
Would they ever blame the Czechs or Slovaks for the Soviet repression of 1968? Would they ever blame the Lithuanians for the Soviet crackdown of 1991? We Europeans may have different histories and different languages, but there's no European language in which peace is synonymous with surrender and sovereignty is synonymous with occupation. The people of Ukraine are freedom fighters, just like the heroes that freed Central and Eastern Europe from Soviet rule.
Excellent. But now that's great rhetoric. You have to back it and firmly back it in order to actually accomplish it. It's like these two things have to be connected, otherwise it just doesn't work. The circuit doesn't connect and it short circuits. Okay. Meanwhile, in Russia, here's what they're saying. Even if Ukraine capitulates, even if Ukraine agrees on neutral status, it's impossible to believe this because no one can guarantee it. And over the past 2 years, we have seen for ourselves what the neutral status of states that have maintained it, not for a year or two, but for several decades, is. I know the perfect way to guarantee it, the perfect way of guarantee, which you and I have been talking about all along, is our troops reaching the western borders of Ukraine. They just said it. The ideal guarantee, which always works, is the presence of our group of forces. Wow. Like, like they're saying it. Okay? Anyway. Now, this is in the Atlantic Council for Russia and Putin himself. Ukraine is not a goal. Ukraine is just a tool. Yeah, that's right. He's trying to subvert the international order as it is. Let's listen to this.
For Russia and for Putin himself, Ukraine, it's not a goal. Ukraine is just a tool. Because this is not just a war between two states. This is a war between two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. And with this war, Putin attempts to convince the entire world that democracy, rule of law, human rights, and freedom are fake values because they couldn't protect anyone during the war. He attempts to convince that the country with a strong military potential and nuclear weapon can break the world order, can dictate its rules to entire international community, and even forcibly change internationally recognized borders. And if Putin succeeds, it will encourage other authoritarian leaders in the different parts of the globe to do the same.
Now, hear what she just said. It's going to be a lesson to other dictators. But if you're Putin, you think you're kind of winning now because look how you are deterring the West. You just nuclear saber rattle a bunch and they're going to stand back and not do anything, right? What the State Department spokesperson is very concerned about North Korea rather than actually doing something. If you don't do something, you get more of it. Okay, just a little bit more. Yesterday, I was trying to pronounce Buryatia. And then I was trying to make sure I was pronouncing it correctly, so I went to a place to find out how to pronounce it, and they told me it was this. It's not Buryatia, and most of you corrected me afterwards when I was trying to make sure I got it correct. So thank you for those of you who reached back out and corrected my pronunciation of Buryatia. I appreciate that greatly. Finally, I'll leave you with this picture where they say the day may end, but the watch never does. Good night. Wow. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.